Americans talk about Donald Trump the way families talk about weather, with equal parts resignation, fascination, and a quiet calculation about what to do. Next, since he was sworn in again on January 20, 2025, his second term has unfolded less like a sequel and more like a stress test of the nation's institutions. And fault lines revealing once more how a single presidency can refract into 100 different Americas at once. Ask his supporters and they'll tell you Trump is, above all, a breaker of calcified consensus. They see a leader who treats politics as a transaction on behalf of the country, reasserting border control, forcing hard conversations about trade, and appointing officials who promise to cut red tape. They cheer the tariff first posture as overdue leverage in a world of imbalanced commerce, and they view executive actions on trade and immigration as a bracing course correction after years of drift. To them, the bluntness is a feature, not a bug. The drama is the necessary noise of moving heavy furniture. Recent White House actions on reciprocal tariffs and a flurry of executive orders reinforce that perception of velocity and intent. Ask his critics and you'll hear a different register, one that stresses norms over novelty. They worry that governing by headline and proclamation erodes guardrails, deepens polarization, and treats complexity as a nuisance. They see the tariff machine as a tax on the American consumer wearing a patriotic mask, and they fear that hardline immigration rules reduce human beings to talking points while straining courts, cities, and diplomatic ties. Their unease is not only ideological, it is practical. If your grocery bill rises, if your small import-heavy business trims staff, if your city must house migrants without more federal support, the costs feel immediate and personal. Both instincts, force and fret, are now quantifiable in public opinion. Trump's job approval this summer averaged around 40% in Gallup's tracking, mirroring the persistent, low ceiling polarization that defined much of his first term. Even issue by issue, most Americans tell pollsters they disapprove of his handling of major topics, from the economy to immigration. Though there are meaningful pockets of support on specific moves, these numbers do resolve the argument. They measure its temperature. Immigration is where the split becomes most vivid and most nuanced. A Pew survey in June found majority support for substantially expanding the U.S. Mexico border wall, 56%, a shift from 2019 that includes rising support among some Democrats and across several demographic groups, yet in the very same research, majorities oppose measures like suspending asylum applications or other maximalist steps. In other words, Americans have grown more open to hard infrastructure at the border while remaining skeptical of policies that seem to foreclose due process or humanitarian obligations. The country is simultaneously hawkish about control and cautious about cruelty. Trade sits at a similar crossroads. The administration's reciprocal tariff agenda promises protection and leverage. Consumers, businesses, and some economists warn about higher prices and supply chain friction. Public mood surveys at the start of the year captured exactly that ambivalence. People list the economy, inflation, and immigration as top priorities, but confidence that Washington can deliver is limited. Supporters frame the tariffs as short-term pain for long-term sovereignty. Detractors call it an expensive rerun. Most Americans, meanwhile, simply want the math of daily life to add up. Reality on the ground complicates every slogan. After decades of growth, the number of immigrants in the United States plateaued and even dipped in recent months, a sign of stepped-up removals, departures, and tighter entry, yet also a reminder that labor markets, families, and local economies are already braided. With migration, border images can be stark. Lived life is subtler. Towns with new factories may welcome protective policies. Port cities that rely on global throughput may not. The same policy can look like ballast in one zip code and ballast dumping in another. Why then does Trump continue to command such intensity? positive and negative, because he maps onto deeper American divides that predate him, urban versus rural, credentialed. Expertise versus practical experience, managed interdependence versus muscular self-reliance. Many voters who felt unseen by technocratic consensus finally feel overrepresented in him. Many who cherished procedural calm experience his style as a constant alarm. He is both cause and conduit. What does the future look like from here? 3 sketches. The steel and sandbags path. The administration keeps leaning into tariffs, energy, production, and visible border hardening. If inflation behaves and jobs hold steady, expect a grudging, low enthusiasm tolerance from a slice of independence. If prices jump or allies retaliate, support could erode quickly where margins matter. Today's approval baseline suggests a narrow lane, not a mandate. The courts and Congress grind. Executive actions invite litigation. Agencies must translate slogans into rules. Congress, fractious and election-minded, bargains piecemeal. Policy change arrives but unevenly, with courts as constant referees and states improvising their own responses. The result is a patchwork that intensifies place-based politics. The coalitions rewritten drift. Issue coalitions, not party labels, become decisive. You can already see it in the polling crosstabs on the wall. Voters who are culturally moderate but economically anxious form a new hinge group, if either party learns to speak to that hinge. Without alienating core supporters, the 2026 map looks very different. None of this is destiny. Public priorities are remarkably stable, economy first. Then immigration, with foreign policy and health care close behind, yet moods move with prices, headlines, and the feel of local life. If Americans begin to sense competent execution, fewer crises, clearer trade-offs, opinions can soften. At the edges, if not, expect the familiar seesaw, high passion, low consensus. In the end, what Americans think about Trump doubles as a mirror of what Americans think about America. Should strength be measured in walls, in deals, in courts, or in the grace of the process itself? The next stretch of his presidency will keep pressing that question, and like the weather, everyone will keep checking the sky, hopeful, wary, and very much alive to what comes next.